The story begins on October 30th, also called the Devil's Night. We observe a city burning from above. A girl narrates that at one time, people believed when someone perished, a crow carried their soul to the land of the deceased. But sometimes a terrible thing happened and a sadness got carried with it, leaving the soul in a restless state. However, sometimes the crow could bring a soul back to make things right. Jumping into the film, we see the police at a crime scene. A lady is receiving medical attention. The sergeant, a man of middle age, says there are currently 143 fires in the city. Another officer replies that the ones responsible for them are slacking from last year. Sergeant Albrecht claims there are still 3 hours to go, so perhaps they just had a slow start. The scene shifts to showcase the central creature in the film, a crow. Once the police get the lady out of the building, a young girl approaches the gurney. She is Sarah, whom Albrecht tells that her sister is going to be okay. The girl reveals that the lady isn't her sister. She is her friend. 1 year later, we see the crow again. Sarah narrates that if two people are meant to be together, nothing can keep them apart. She collects a few flowers at a cemetery from graves to place on Shelley's grave. She is the friend Sarah lost 1 year ago. The girl puts one of the flowers on another grave. It is for someone named Eric. She watches a crow land on his grave and start pecking at it. The next scene shows Albrecht sitting at a hot dog stand. Sarah arrives to join him. It seems like they are friends now. At the other end, several hooligans are trashing an arcade. Switching back to the cemetery, the crow watches the earth covering Eric's corpse split open. The previously deceased man seems to have eerily come back to life, for he emerges from the earth and screams. Meanwhile, the hooligans place a timed bomb at the arcade before they flee. Not surprisingly, Eric struggles to walk. He hasn't engaged in this activity for 1 year. Soon the timed bomb explodes, which Albrecht hears. It prompts him to run to the explosion's location. In the meantime, Eric climbs on the roof of a building. He sees a crime scene tape covering a door, but it doesn't stop him from entering the flat. The crow follows him wherever he goes. Inside, Eric sees a fluffy cat he calls Gabriel. Picking it up, he gets a painful flashback that brings him to his knees. A group of bandits barged into this apartment in the flashback, violating a certain woman. They trashed the place and got ready to take advantage of her. Eric was also there, and he remembers how they took his life by throwing him out of the circular window. Out of the flashback, Eric grabs the broken glass before looking at his bloody hands. He discovers he is now an extraordinary being because his injuries instantly heal. At a bar, one of the culprits drinks to Devil's Night, his new favorite holiday. They show just how reckless they are as two of them swallow a bullet with their drink. They cause trouble even among themselves. Shifting back to Eric, he finds a sad mask in the room, which sparks another flashback. However, this one is pleasant. He was with Shelley, who said she loved him. He wanted her to say it again, so she did. Eric has other pleasant memories with her and Sarah. The nostalgia makes him strike the mirror in anger, realizing he can never repeat moments like that. He deals with this sorrow by applying a product on his face to whiten it. Contrasting it, he puts on black clothes and walks to the circular window. At this appropriate moment, the crow lands on his shoulder, like it has become his new companion. Eric knows he has transformed into a new man, as he stands to look out the same window from which he fell to meet his untimely demise. Later, we see one of the hooligans at a pawn shop. He has an interesting name, Tintin. The store owner gives $50 for an item Tintin brought him. Unsatisfied with the low amount, the hooligan insults the man before he leaves. To get revenge, Tintin closes the shutter outside the store and locks it. Meanwhile, Eric runs on the roofs of buildings, following his crow. The bird sees someone walking below. Because of their mystical connection, Eric sees what it sees. The person walking is Tintin. Eric decides to fall from the building, landing on his back. He laughs, realizing he no longer gets injured. Tintin hears his laughter before seeing Eric approaching him. He throws profanities at the gothic-looking guy, saying Halloween isn't until tomorrow. Feeling threatened, he takes out a knife, but Eric jumps on him. They fight for some time and Eric gains the upper hand. He yells that Tintin is an assassin, an accusation the latter denies. Eric wants him to admit he took the lives of a couple on Halloween. Suddenly, Tintin agrees to having done that, insulting his victims in the process. This prompts Eric to slap him. Tintin says he the lady and she loved it. He headbutts Eric off him, followed by slamming him with a pipe. Taking out 2 knives, the wicked man says butchering people is fun. He throws the knives at Eric, which he evades. He catches a 3rd knife between his hands and throws it into Tintin's shoulder. Now there is nothing left to do except to take his life. At a concert, we see Eric in a photo with his band. One of the culprits is there. He is T-Bird, Meeting a man in a suit by the name of Grange, he tells T-Bird to gather his people for work the next night. The scene cuts, and we are introduced to a mysterious man sitting on a bed. A lady comes to him, saying he's thinking about the past. He holds a crystal ball and tells her his father gave it to him on his 5th birthday. He told him that childhood is over as soon as one realizes they are going to perish. In the next scene, Sarah enters a bar, where she interrupts a couple engaged in intimacy. She guesses the woman Darla will not be home soon. The guy with her says she is busy. They both want Sarah to leave, so she does. Switching to the pawn shop, the owner, Gideon, sees someone has arrived behind his door and yells for the visitor to leave. But the stranger moves the shutter to the side, causing Gideon to arm himself. The stranger is Eric, breaking through the glass. He quotes the raven as the crow flies into the man's store. Eric declares he is looking for an engagement ring. Gideon responds by shooting him. Yet, when he sees the wound quickly heal, he freaks out. Eric puts a knife through Gideon's hand, repeating what he wants. He adds that the ring was pawned there 1 year ago by Tintin. Meanwhile, a lifeless Tintin gets carried away by the police. Several knives are stuck inside him. Albrecht is there with a detective, and they observe a large drawing of a crow made from blood. We learn the sergeant does not get along with the detective. Since the latter has more authority, he orders Albrecht to leave his crime scene. At the pawn shop, Gideon tells his unwelcome guest where he keeps his rings. Finding the box, he looks through all the rings until he locates the one he wants. He puts it on and remembers how Shelley told him she loved him. He approaches Gideon to point a shotgun at him. He spills gasoline on the floor before demanding to know where the rest of Tintin's friends are. The owner says they all reside at a place he calls the Pit. He mentions the one named Funboy living nearby. Eric says he won't take Gideon's life. He wants him to tell the rest of Tintin's friends that their demise is coming for them. As he walks away, the owner insults him heavily. Thus, Eric steps out of the store and fires his shotgun at the gasoline he spilled. The store explodes, but Gideon is lucky to jump out of the back door in time. Soon Albrecht arrives at the site and points his gun at Eric. He orders him not to move. If he does, he will be fatally shot. Eric changes his phrase to say he's already deceased, and yet he is moving. He walks toward Albrecht, encouraging him to shoot. Continuing to taunt him, he asks if Albrecht remembers him or Shelley. The sergeant claims that she has perished. Once Eric asks if he knows T-Bird, Albrecht realizes Eric is the one who took Tintin's life. Eric corrects him, saying he was already lifeless. He lost his life 1 year ago the moment he touched Shelley. They are all deceased, he adds. They just don't know it. When the officer gets distracted, Eric uses this time to escape. Following this, we see the mysterious man with the lady Micah. She tells him that the energies are aligning against him. Grange enters the room to inform the man, Top Dollar, that Gideon's shop has been burned down. T-Bird is with him, revealing that one of his friends lost his life. Top Dollar doesn't seem to care about his friend. He is a powerful individual, whom T-Bird must obey. He gives Top Dollar full authority to do whatever he wants. The man wants to know why Gideon's store burned down. Later on, Sarah skateboards outside, and Eric grabs her from the back to save the girl from an oncoming car. She doesn't know who he is because he has his back turned to her. From their limited interaction, she guesses he is Eric, but he disappears without giving her any confirmation. At the police station, Albrecht talks to his coworker Annie. She gives him some information, that Shelley was fighting a tenant eviction. He has Eric's banned photo on his desk and draws lines on Eric's face. He gets it to look like the current Eric with his makeup on. The next scene shows Darla with the man she was with at the bar. The crow flies into the flat while they are being intimate. It watches them, and we know Eric sees them through the bird's eyes. He enters the flat through the window, calling out to Funboy. Seeing him, Eric takes a chair to sit beside the couple. Funboy points a gun at him, which Eric covers with his hand. He gets a bullet hole in his hand as a consequence. Eric pretends to be in pain before he laughs. Funboy witnesses his hand healing unnaturally quickly. He shoots Eric a few more times, bringing minimal or no harm to the man who rose from his grave. Eric retorts by gravely injuring the man. He follows this by holding Darla to a mirror and saying, "Mother is the name for God on the lips of children." He grabs the woman's head to say her daughter is out there on the streets, waiting for her. Thus, he allows her to run away. There is a bar on the first floor of this building, where Gideon happens to be drinking. Grange draws near to fill his glass. He asks Gideon if he burned himself playing with matches. He also says Gideon has an appointment. In a short time, he sees Darla running out, raising his curiosity. Therefore, he climbs the stairs to get into Funboy's room. In there, he observes the man lying on the floor with several syringes stuck to his chest. Eric is at the window, gesturing for Grange to be silent before he vanishes in the dark. Later on, we see Albrecht at his apartment. He hears something in another room and checks what it is. It is Eric, who has entered through the window. He stands behind Albrecht, startling the off-duty officer by speaking to him. Albrecht is confused, saying he saw Eric's corpse and watched him get buried. He asks if Eric is a ghost, but even he doesn't know what he is. He needs Albrecht to tell him about what happened to him and Shelley. The sergeant bluntly tells Eric that he fell a decent number of floors down from the window, whilst his girlfriend was evacuated. She lost her life at the hospital. Eric puts his hands on the man's head to receive a painful flashback. Seeing the past through Albrecht's eyes, he learns that the man stayed with Shelley the entire time in the hospital. Eric tells him that the little things used to mean very much to Shelley. He thought they were trivial, yet he now knows everything counts. All Albrecht can do is apologize for what happened to the poor couple. At Top Dollar's place, Gideon is describing the phenomenon he experienced at his store. Grange is present too, saying he saw a strange guy jump from a window. Top Dollar throws a human eyeball at Gideon. He says it's what happened to the last person who did not cooperate with him. Afterward, he opens 2 metal doors, revealing about 24 swords. The powerful man takes one of them, holding the blade intimidatingly close to his guest. Micah, who happens to be the boss's half-sister, steps on him to humiliate him further. Gideon tells the man everything he knows about Eric. Alas, Top Dollar brutally impales the man, regardless of what he shared with him. In the next scene, Sarah returns home and is looking through her music records until she finds the one of Eric's band. As she plays it, the crow visits her at the window. Once she walks over to it, the bird flies away to find T-Bird and his last friend. While the friend goes to the store, T-Bird sits in their car to wait for him. Soon he sees the crow land on the car. At this moment, Eric surprises him, sitting in the back seat. He points a gun at the leader of the hooligans. Having the upper hand, Eric orders him to drive, and the man listens. During their ride, a terrified T-Bird offers money to Eric to recruit him. Eric may have cared about such things earlier. He certainly doesn't anymore. Eventually, we see T-Bird restrained in the car and Eric talking to him about the grisly situation from last year. T-Bird claims that Shelley wasn't cooperating with their tenant relocation program. He also says her idiot boyfriend showed up to cause trouble, not knowing the boyfriend is Eric. T-Bird is furious, asking what Eric wants. Suddenly, he recognizes him, yet cannot believe it. Eric was supposed to have perished. However, he is alive, exacting his revenge against those who wronged him. He places a timed explosive near T-Bird and makes the car drive by itself. Reaching a certain distance, it explodes. Eric lights the ground on fire, which forms the outline of a crow. In the morning, Sarah awakens in her apartment. She sees her mom, Darla, cooking eggs for her. We learn the lady hasn't done this in a long time. Sarah is curious to know what happened to her mother for her to suddenly start behaving like this. Someone woke her up, Darla claims. At the police station, the detective tells Albrecht there was a third casualty in the latter's neighborhood in the last 24 hours. The detective accuses him of covering up for someone. He knows who it is because he asks who is the guy with the painted face. Albrecht tells him he's the detective, prompting the man to suspend him for misconduct. Afterward, Sarah arrives at the building that Eric fell from. We see him burning photos inside. He sits near a fireplace, remembering his good memories with Shelley. When Sarah enters the room, she yells out to Eric. The fireplace is no longer active. Sarah picks up a ripped photo of Shelley close to it. She sees Eric is the one who was ripped from it. Seeing the photo makes her say she knew it was him. She claims to miss Eric and Shelley. It gets lonely being on her own. Since he's not presenting himself, Sarah decides to leave, saying she thought he cared. At that moment, he appears near the circular window. He tells the girl he does care, and she runs to him gladly. The two warmly hug each other. In the next scene, T-Bird's last friend is at Top Dollar's place. He points at Eric in his band photo, identifying him as the assassin. Top Dollar learns from Grange that Eric's grave is empty. T-Bird's friend worries that Eric will take his life. He behaves crazily, causing the boss to punch him, effectively shutting him up. Soon Micah walks over to say an unspecified, they have arrived. Top Dollar leaves with her. Following this, Albrecht meets Sarah at the hot dog stand. She asks him if a lifeless person can really come back to life. He thinks he knows who she has in mind, but asks to be certain. She says he will think she's crazy, but the sergeant replies they both will have to be locked away. At this point, she asks if he has seen Eric too. Albrecht chooses to be cryptic, saying he saw someone. Sarah does not believe Eric returned for her. Switching to Eric, we see him playing his guitar on a roof before slamming it against the speaker in anger. Moving along, our attention is brought to a long table at which some people deal with several weapons. Top Dollar joins them in the head chair. He tells his people they should start a lot of fires and earn a small profit. The problem is that it has all been done already. According to him, it's the best reason to quit. The boss announces that a man has an idea that attracts others of the same mind. The idea expands, becoming an institution. He wants his people to know that greed is for amateurs, but disorder and chaos, these are fun. He was the first to start the fires until he saw every charlatan imitating him. We see Eric outside of the building, listening to Top Dollar's speech. The boss complains that now there are such things as Devil's Night greeting cards. Thus, he repeats that the idea has become the institution, and it's time to move forward. While he talks, the crow lands on the table, capturing everyone's attention. It is the precursor to Eric revealing himself. He jumps on the table, taking a seat on it, and prompting a few of the criminals to point their guns. Top Dollar greets this anomaly as the Avenger. Eric simply points to T-Bird's remaining friend and says he only wants him. Yet Top Dollar says he can't have him. When Eric stands up, the boss orders his cronies to take his life, so they all fire their guns at the guy who eats bullets. After he falls, they rejoice in their victory. Then Eric gets back on his feet and starts shooting at everyone. Witnessing this atrocity, the boss knows it's time to escape. The place turns into a war zone and Eric likely takes dozens of bullets. He assures the criminals that they are all going to perish. The action continues for a respectable amount of time. Once it subsides, Eric collects the last member who partook in the his girlfriend. He throws him out of the window, causing the lowlife to fatally land on a police car. Seconds later, the police barge into the room, pointing their guns at him. But they are the people he chooses not to fight. Eric escapes from the window onto the roof. A helicopter chases him there until he jumps down to the street, where Albrecht advises him to get inside his car. They drive together for a brief amount of time. It is Eric's nature to vanish and keep people guessing what his motives are. In the meantime, the main villains drive in a car. Micah says Eric has power, yet it's power Top Dollar can take from him. She learns the crow is his link between the land of the living and the deceased. Grange reasons that if they destroy the crow, they destroy Eric. Hearing this puts a smile on the boss's face. The next scene shows Sarah sleeping near Shelley's grave. Eric comes to wake her up. She tells him he didn't say goodbye, to which he replies she will have to forgive him for that. He gifts the girl with a necklace he gave to Shelley. She says she will never take it off and hugs him. With this, she heads back home. Alas, Grange captures her. He brings Sarah to Top Dollar inside a church. The man rips the necklace off of her and says he will keep it for good luck. Looking into her eyes, Micah says they are innocent. Soon Eric learns she is in trouble because the crow sees it. He walks into the church and Grange shoots his crow. The boss directs himself toward Eric, who tells the former to let Sarah go. If he does, Eric will let him leave. Not accepting the offer, Top Dollar shoots him in the shoulder. It is no longer a bullet Eric can absorb. He now feels the pain of his injury. However, the crow is still alive. As Grange is about to finish it, Albrecht appears to fire at him. A gunfight ensues between the three of them and results in Albrecht eliminating Grange. While that takes place, Micah manages to collect the powerful bird. It doesn't take long for her to fire from above, hitting Albrecht. Eric approaches her, hearing the lady say that the power of the crow is now hers. But the bird violently pecks at her face, causing her to fall to her demise. The only villain who remains is Top Dollar. Eric gets on the roof, where the boss holds Sarah. He offers himself to Top Dollar, saying he won't fight. The antagonist lets go of Sarah, making her slide down the roof. Luckily, she holds onto the ledge, witnessing the duel that initiates between the bad and the vengeful. Top Dollar fights with one of his many swords. To somewhat match him, Eric rips out the lightning rod attached to the church. After they fight each other with their weapons for an entertaining amount of time, the villain gains the advantage. Eric loses his ring before getting impaled. During this painful moment, Top Dollar repeats his father's words, that every man has a devil and one can't rest until one finds him. He also reveals he was responsible for what happened to Eric and his girlfriend. Furthermore, he wants Eric to know he has a lot of spirit. He's the kind of person Top Dollar will miss. A rare statement coming from him. Eric replies he has something to give him that he doesn't want anymore. He puts his hands on Top Dollar's face, using his supernatural abilities to inflict horrific pain on him. It's the 30 hours of torture that Shelley had to endure in the hospital. Eric instills it to the villain for him to experience all that suffering concentrated into a few seconds. Top Dollar falls from the building and gets fatally impaled. Following this, Eric saves Sarah and they return to Albrecht. The memory he kept of Shelley in the hospital saved Eric. Now he draws near Shelley's grave and falls there. He has a hard time staying alive. Of all people, Shelley walks to him. She is very likely a ghost, yet is still capable of kissing him. We see the crow is alive, holding Eric's ring in its beak. It gives the ring to Sarah. The film concludes with her narrating that if the people they love are stolen from them, the way to preserve their soul is to never stop loving them. Real love is forever.